Hello and welcome to another episode of Ruck N Roll on PodHub. You're on our YouTube and Facebook feeds, and thanks for joining us for this show. We've got so much to look forward to, some scintillating rugby on offer with the two semi-finals of the Knockout Trophy as well as the all-important second leg of the Bradley. Just 1 point in it. Who's going to win? Let's find out.
Let's look back at what happened last week in the second round of the Schools Rugby League with SEAT. The road is yours.
SEAT Car Radials. The road is yours.
We're looking back at the knockout quarterfinals, looking ahead to the semi-finals, and of course, looking ahead to that all-important Bradley. Abdullah is champing at the bit, waiting for that game. We all are. Abdullah, let's look first back at what happened last weekend. We had two outstanding quarterfinals. Everybody comes to the knockout with nothing to lose. It's like the FA Cup because each team knows that they can take out the other team on their day. And to really close semi-finals, let's look first at Wesley versus DS and Nike. 27 points to 20 is how it finished. DS heavily favored going into this game, but the lack of rugby for so many weeks probably undid them.
Yes, but you could say the same for Wesley as well. I mean, it was a fantastic game. Both teams just going absolutely at it. And eventually Wesley just having that little bit more to prevail, probably the more all-rounded side, and that's probably what helped them make it through to the semi-finals.
Yes, DS have some interesting individual players. We saw more of them last year than we did this year. What do you make of that they haven't really been able to come through in their final yet?
Well, I think they seem to have lost a bit of depth in their three quarters, so they seem to be relying much more on the forwards this year. It has worked to them up to a certain extent, but in the crunch games, probably they have been found wanting a bit outside, and they do employ a lot of kicking as well, play a bit of that 10-man rugby. And probably when they come up against a more all-round team, it's a bit hard for them to match up. And that's probably what happened against Wesley, a team that likes to play with a bit more width. And probably they move those big DS forwards up and down a bit more. So eventually just having that little bit more to make it through to the semi-final.
They've probably been my favorite team to watch this season, Abdullah, Wesley, because they play a more old-fashioned, expansive style of rugby, and that's credit to the coaching staff for sticking with that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's probably fits in with their strengths as well. They don't seem to have those very big forwards that some of the other schools have, so they're forced to play in that kind of a style. And they have run most of the top schools very close, even in the league stage. So no surprises at all to see them make it through to the semi-final.
Well, they'll come into the semi-final. Let's see whether they can do another giant-killing performance there. We'll talk about the semi-finals in a moment. But the next quarter-final was one with, not without a little bit of controversy before the whistle. We always prefer that to after the whistle, because St. Thomas's were going to play, that they were not going to play, that they were playing again. So it was a little bit of mismanagement, I think, on the part of both the St. Thomas's administration, who knew they had a traditional fixture to play at the time of the finals and semi-finals, and also the fact that they maybe pulled out a little bit too late in the day. And of course, DS came forward and said, look, that's not a fair thing to do. And they were right, because they would have got a different draw if St. Thomas's had indicated that they were pulling out much earlier on in the piece. But after all that was put to bed, they did come onto the field and take on a Zahira College team that everyone expected St. Thomas's to beat quite comfortably. And it was 20 points to 8 at some stages, and I think everybody, including the Thomi in first 15, thought they had won the game. But Zahira had other ideas.
Yeah, that's right, and that's just the nature of knockout rugby, isn't it? you know there's no tomorrow, so you just throw everything at it, and to Zahira's credit, that's exactly what they did. But even in this game, there was just some fantastic rugby played by both teams. As soon as you felt that one team was down and out, they just picked themselves up and just came right back in and managed to get a score and keep the game as close as possible. So all in all, Shanak, I think it was just two fantastic quarterfinal games. There was a bit of question marks about the integrity of the tournament with so much of pullouts by other teams, but I think these two quarterfinals saved the blushes of the administrators, we'd have to say, and I think it sets up brilliantly for a wonderful semi-final. But overall, I think full credit to all four teams who played the quarterfinals, because they definitely helped keep the prestige of the tournament to a certain level.
Yeah, they certainly did, especially the try of the season that I thought came in this game, the individual try of the season, I should say. Under Binut Pereira, one of the three tries that Zahira scored, it was off a kickoff deep into the Zahira 22, and they charged down the kicker. The kicker was under pressure, so he had to pass, and Binut Pereira just took one step and ran a good 80 meters, beat the entire Tomian team, and I thought that was a fantastic try. But coming back, it was 20 all at that stage, and coming back, St. Thomas has scored another really good try off the first phase.
Yeah, exactly, and it just shows that when teams are under pressure, they're ready to execute from both sides, and we saw that in the other quarterfinal as well. So absolutely brilliant by all four teams, and full credit. It's unfortunate that two teams have to go out, but that's just the nature of knockout rugby, isn't it?
Identical scorelines in both these quarterfinals. I just want to ask you one final thing with the answer you just gave, Abdullah. Teams under pressure, they performed. One thing that was absent at the Sugidadasa Stadium is this huge main crowd that we're used to getting at some of the other stadia. So at Havelock Park, at Sierra FC, at the Royal Sports Complex, wherever these games have been played, we've got a lot of crowd. But at the Sugidadasa Stadium, the crowd even did what little bit of it there is by away. So perhaps a lack of pressure allows these players to maybe execute a little better than they do when the crowd is too far in.
Could be, but it could also be the nature of the tournament, isn't it? When you are down and out, you know that you just have to throw everything at it. You're willing to take a bit more risks in order to get back into the game. So I think it's probably the nature of the competition as well. And also it could be the crowd, but I think it's more the nature of the competition. Teams know that they've got to make sure that they execute, that pressure is there, otherwise that's the end of the season for most of the teams. So it could be a bit of both, yeah.
So let's see what the semi-finals have in store for us. We had a couple of buys in the tournament already. We had St. Peter's going through as the defending champions, and then we also had Isipatana coming through without a quarterfinal to play for either of those teams. So they will play the winners of the first quarterfinal, St. Peter's taking on Wesley, and the winners of the second quarterfinal get a chance to take on Isipatana. So a repeat of two very interesting games from the league. St. Peter's and Wesley were very close at halftime. I think it was 10 points to 12, if I remember right. Isipatana and St. Thomas was also absolutely nothing to separate them until very late in the game. So we're looking at two outstanding knockout semis.
Yes, two brilliantly set up semis. And also what we need to keep in mind, and probably a interesting tell is that St. Peter's and Isipatana both haven't played any rugby for about 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of form they will be in, whether they'll be a little bit rusty, because Wesley and St. Thomas are a bit battle-hardened, because St. Thomas has had their traditional fixture against St. Joseph's as well, and of course that quarterfinal encounter against Zahira. So they will be a bit more match fit. Wesley, again, another very tough encounter against DS, so they will be bringing in a bit more form, is more recent form into that semi-finals, while St. Peter's and Isipatana would have had their training runs, but as we all know, there's nothing like match practice. So it'll be interesting to see how those two teams, champions and runners-up, adapt to not having played rugby for about 3 weeks, and how they will step up in in a crucial semi-final game. But having said that, both those teams have that quality in their ranks, isn't it? So all in all, I think it's just set up for a brilliant game of two brilliant games of rugby.
So St. Peter's are the defending champions of the league. Isipatana, the runners-up in that league tournament. So obviously, they will be the favourites going into these semi-finals. That being said, we had DS who were hot favourites going into the quarterfinal, and we had St. Thomas's who were hot favourites going into their quarterfinal as well, and the other teams ran them really close. So what do Wesley have to do to beat St. Peter's?
I think they just got to play to their strengths. They shouldn't try and change too much. They try and play the game at pace. Because if they try and get into an arm wrestle against St. Peter's, I don't think that's going to suit their game. So they just got to trust their skills, trust their ability, and just execute on the day. And if they do that, no doubt that they can put a pressure on St. Peter's. And end of the day, Wesley will come with a nothing to lose attitude. No one is expecting much from them. St. Peter's will be expected to win, so that carries with it a bit of pressure as well. So overall, I think it's going to be a very interesting game.
Yes, it will, and so will Isipathana versus St. Thomas's. A bit of a grudge battle from the league, where St. Thomas's felt that they were a little hard done by too late in that game. But they will come into this Isipathana game with a big point to prove.
Yes, and they will bring in a little bit of confidence as well. They will run close against Zahira, but what it will probably give them a little bit of belief is the fact that they managed to prevail. And that's what counts at the end of the day. They managed to get the job done to make it to the next step. So they will be coming in with a bit of match fitness as well. But again, they will need to execute against a very good Isipathana team. And they will also probably need to adapt their game a bit more. Unlike the previous semi-final, they cannot afford to play too loose. They will need to keep it tight, control per position as much as possible. And if they can do that, they can give those Isipathana as a good fight. Isipathana from their side will probably just stick to their strengths. They like to play a game with a little bit more width, bring Shahid Zumbi into the game as much as possible. And overall, I think it's just set up brilliantly for two very good semi-finals.
Yes, two big individual players, both at fly half, Ihan Gulat Singh again for St. Thomas's and Shahid Zumri for Isipathana. Let's see what their kicking games can do for their teams on the weekend. So that's a look forward to the semi-finals of the President's Knockout Trophy. Let's see what happens. But we will all be having our eyes on Pallakale as well, traveling up for that game. Bella and I will hopefully be there in the commentary box this time. I hope I'm not speaking too soon. But it's going to be a really interesting game because Trinity take a 1-point advantage into Pallakale, and Pallakale has been a fortress of sorts for them in the recent past. Let's have a quick look at what our good friend Hamad, our producer, has done on the stats that over the last 10 years, Abdullah, it's been 10 years of dominance, one would have to say, for Royal College. But when you look at the stats and break them down, the dominance is not as obvious as when you just say 10 Bradleys and 6 won by Royal, just 1 won by Trinity. When you break it down and see the amount of matches actually won out of those 18 games, 1 was drawn, you have to look at the 10 matches won by Royal, 7 matches won by Trinity, which makes it a little closer than you would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just shows that it's not been one-way traffic. The rugby is always very keenly contested. Home advantage does play a big part in it as well. And also, it also kind of shows that just winning the first leg doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be plain sailing, because when a team is down, the determination is so much higher, isn't it? And that's what we were discussing last week as well. Trinity, they will be coming into this match with an entirely different level of expectation from their supporters, from their Candy crowd as well. Royal will be definitely down and disappointed, but then again, they will come up with a point to prove as well. So these statistics just lend and explain what we have been just discussing. So I think it just shows how keenly contested this Bradley Shield has been. Although Royal have managed to annex the Shield 6 times against Trinity's one over the last 10-year period. And we need to keep in mind as well, there were 2 years which were unfortunately lost to COVID as well.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at those year-on-year results as well. So Trinity last won under Tarinda Rapata in 2014, and that was also a fairly close encounter, but Trinity managed to win both of those legs. Then, of course, we went to 2015, where Royal won, and that was a smashing win in the second leg. They managed to beat Trinity 49 points to 0. And then we had that famous tied encounter, in just the second one in the whole history of the rugby, 2016, 22-17 and 13-18, so 5-point differences on both sides. So Trinity winning that second leg. And then in 2017, we had Royal winning, and in 2018, Royal winning comfortably, and in 2019 as well, Royal lost 1 leg, but they did manage to win the Bradley Shield nevertheless. So it has been pretty close, and the legs have almost always been shared, except for a couple of those years, Abdullah. So do you see that happening again this time?
I definitely hope so, but it'll be interesting to see going up to Pallakele and trying to reverse the result is not an easy thing to do. But again, there's just 1 point in it, isn't it? So there are going to be so much of fluctuations in that game. One team goes into the lead, the other team will obviously try to get back into the game. So it's a winner takes all basically. So it's going to be really interesting to see how both teams approach, what the mindset is going to be of both teams, which team handles the pressure better, which team handles the conditions better. That is something which I felt Royal struggled last year up in Pallakele after dominating that first half. They just gave it away in the second half. So all those things will be taken into account in this second leg, and there are so many external factors that come into it as well. The wind, the conditions, how Royal are going to adapt to a slightly bigger ground as well. All those are going to come into play. So just set up brilliantly for a wonderful game of rugby.
So that's the big question, of course, who will win? That's in the 2024, just after the 2024 column. And so those 2 big years where the Shield was not played because of COVID, of course, and Royal winning the other 2, and it's beautifully poised. But the thing about 1-point games under it doesn't give the coaches a chance to change tactics. You can't change and say, okay, just go out there and defend your lead. A 1-point lead, 5-point lead, anything that's below 7 points, you can't go out there and defend. So how will Fazil Marija have been approaching this game in the last 2 weeks? It seems like an eternity.
Yeah, it is. And basically, I'm sure they'll just park that first leg aside and just focus on winning the game, do what you need to do. Trinity will be bringing a lot of confidence from their performance in Pallakele, but they know that again they have to go step up and perform. Royal will be hurting, and I'm sure they would have done their homework as well, and just try to eliminate those errors, try to work a bit more on their discipline. And I'm sure that if they can do that and execute better, the game is there for the taking. But again, it's on the day's date.
Yeah, and speaking about discipline, Abdullah, I think it was about 14 penalties to 5. 15 penalties to 8. Actually, the 14 penalties to 5 was for the All Blacks against South Africa, and 15 to 8. So you actually saw what happened there as well. The All Blacks leading by 10 points, but still South Africa catching up because they conceded so many penalties. So I think in a way for Dushanth Leuke, looking at that statistic, he would think, okay, this is quite an easy fix. We've conceded so many penalties and we still lost only by 1 point. And if we get these things right, we're coming back with the shield.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, it's execution on the day as well, isn't it? So Rod will need to be a bit more aware of how they're going to go about the game. And especially most of those penalties that they conceded were pretty much unforced as well, isn't it? It was not that Trinity applied a lot of pressure. There were a few instances where Trinity applied the pressure and managed to draw the penalty. But a majority of it was through Roy's own doing. So discipline is going to be key. Also, I think Roy, you need to just keep the emotions in check. Sometimes you can overcycle yourself that you want to get back and get that revenge. So they've just got to keep a calm head about themselves and just believe in their abilities, believe in their talent, and execute. From Trinity's point of view, I think just going by last year's game as well, I think Shan Altaf once again is going to be a pivotal player for them. His kicking game in that second half, in the leg up in Pallakele, just changed the face of that rugby. So Royal will need to contend with that. The back three is going to be a big part because, again, it's a big ground. It's an open ground as well. The wind could play a part. So all those factors are going to come in, and both teams, I'm sure, will be working on their strategies and tactics.
Abdullah, you've coached at the pretty high level here in Sri Lanka, but when you've got a guy who can influence a game like Shan Altaf can, do you man mark him? Do you tell one of your third row forwards, look, just don't let him out of your side?
Yeah, well, the thing with Shan is he's just a brilliant tactical player. He's not that traditional running fly half. He will bring other players into the game. His distribution is very good. His tactical kicking is brilliant. So you probably need to work a bit on the back three on how they are going to manage his kicking game, and it's just that they have played against him enough. I'm sure they will study the video footage as well, and they not just focus absolutely on him, but be aware of what he can do and prepare accordingly.
Yeah, it helps that he's probably being coached by the fly half that not many third row forwards managed to lay a finger on when he was playing for club and country. So let's look at the Bradby. Let's see who wins. Abdullah, what's your call?
Well, it's really tight to call, isn't it? I just feel man-to-man Royal probably have the edge. But again, home ground advantage for Trinity. That's it. Playing in Pallakali, that's such a huge advantage for them. It's really tough, Shanaga. I'm just really sitting on the fence here because it's just too close to call.
I tend to agree with you. There's no way I can tell you which way it's going to go because tactically 2 weeks is eternity. And we will never know what has happened in these last 2 weeks in the camps for us to be able to tell you with any sense of certainty what's going to happen. So you just have to watch and see.
Car Radials, the road is yours.
Getting stuck in traffic at rush hour, you can't decide. But where you have a late lunch, you decide. You Decide is the easiest, most exciting way of getting the best value for your next meal. Download the You Decide app now.
So 3 brand new fixtures to look forward to in the weekend. We have the 2 semi-finals from the Knockout Trophy and of course the second leg of the Bradby. All those 3 are going to be absolutely close, absolutely scintillating. And we have the You Decide app with us to look forward to it. If you want to win vouchers for 4,000 rupees from the Papa Rich restaurant, then all you have to do is download the You Decide app. You have to tag 3 people in the comment section right below here and make sure that you get Amasha's attention because she's going to be picking our winners. And our winner from last week is Hiruni Naosha. Thanks very much, Hiruni. You can collect your Papa Rich voucher and hope you have a great time on You Decide. Don't use it just for this, but of course keep using the app and it's going to be something that's going to get you all the best deals in restaurants wherever you want them.
Getting stuck in traffic at rush hour, you can't decide. But where you have a late lunch, you decide. You Decide is the easiest, most exciting way of getting the best value for your next meal. Download the You Decide app now.
Well, that brings us to the end of another power-packed show of Ruck N Roll. We've looked back at the fixtures that are upcoming and, of course, given a lot of credit to the quarterfinalists who did superbly to run the semi-finalists as close as they did over the last weekend. But the all-important Bradby is upcoming. Of course, we've got another foreign referee, a very young foreign referee as well, who doesn't have as much international experience as Jaco de Wit did in the last game. So let's wait and see how that goes. Another factor that comes in to make all the uncertainties all the more thrilling in this game of rugby. We'll see you in Pallakali and of course back for next week's show. Thanks for joining us on Facebook and YouTube. You're on Pod Hub. You're with Ruck N Roll. I'm Shanak Amarasinghe. We'll see you next week.